For centuries, scholars have tried to map the exact proportions of a human being. But isolating our anatomy only answers the biological question. It leaves the metaphysical essence of the human person undefined. Traditional anthropology approaches this by studying physical development, genetic origins, and the cultural artifacts our ancestors left behind. Meanwhile, the philosophy of anthropology examines the methods and assumptions underlying that empirical fieldwork. But there is a third, distinct field, philosophical anthropology. As this matrix shows, it steps away from the biological data on the left to focus on the logic tree, the metaphysics and phenomenology of the human person. Phenomenology is the philosophical study of how things are consciously experienced from a first-person perspective. Instead of treating the human as a mere collection of cells, this discipline models us as autonomous agents who simultaneously absorb their social environment and create their own independent values. Throughout history, philosophy relied on fragmented, often incompatible theories to explain how this conscious agency worked. While many assume a biological origin, the modern framework for understanding human nature emerged from a severe intellectual crisis in 1920s Germany. Empirical science maps the brain and measures the pulse, but the internal, lived experience of a shared world requires the lens of philosophical anthropology. This illustrates the earliest framework from classical antiquity, Plato's dualism, dividing the human essence into two parts. In this model, the physical body is a material prison. The soul is an independent entity yearning to break free to a realm of pure ideas. Aristotle rejected this extreme separation, proposing a structural update to how we define life. Aristotle introduced hylomorphism, a theory stating that every physical object is a compound of matter and form. Here, the model merges them into a single, integrated substance. The soul acts as the organizing principle, structuring the body's matter. Within this framework, Aristotle assigned humans one specific characteristic, elevating them above other animals: rationality. Antiquity left us with a baseline model. The human was understood as a solitary, rational animal, whose physical form and spiritual intellect were integrated into a strictly ordered hierarchy. Early Christian thinkers, particularly Augustine of Hippo, reinforced this integrated model. He incorporated the theological concept of creatio ex nihilo, the belief that God created everything out of nothing, to argue that the material body is an essential, intentionally designed component of the human. Augustine compared the relationship between body and soul to a marriage, using the phrase caro tua conjux tua, your body is your wife. While he maintained that the soul ruled the body, he insisted the physical flesh was a permanent aspect of human nature. This profound structural unity held strong until the dawn of the modern period, when Cartesian skepticism arrived and forcefully fractured the entire model. By reducing certain knowledge only to the thinking self, Descartes severed the mind from the physical body, destroying centuries of hylomorphic integration. To rebuild a workable framework, Immanuel Kant pivoted away from strict metaphysics. He chose to analyze the human as an empirical free agent. Kant developed pragmatic anthropology. This approach studies human behavior by looking at what humans freely choose to make of themselves in the world. By the early 20th century, the philosophical definition of a human was fragmented. We were caught between biological determinism on one side and an isolated, unmoored rational mind on the other. This intellectual dead end collided with the significant social and intellectual upheaval of Weimar Germany in the 1920s. Out of this crisis, philosopher Max Scheler laid the foundation for philosophical anthropology to operate as its own independent discipline. Scheler rejected the traditional Aristotelian definition of man as a rational animal. He identified the human being as a loving being, placing rationality in a secondary role. To support this, Scheler engineered a new tripartite architecture. This schematic breaks down the person into three interconnected layers: the lived body, the soul, and the central spirit. In this model, love and hatred function as intentional acts. Scheler categorized these as intentional feelings, spiritual acts that actively direct the person toward values in the world. Scheler's framework proved that our defining trait isn't passive rational observation. It is our active, intentional, and emotional engagement with the reality around us. Once Scheler mapped the individual, the discipline expanded to figure out how these complex humans interact. philosopher Ernst Cassirer provided the next major update. Cassirer reclassified man as a symbolic animal, arguing that we mediate our entire experience through language, myth, and art. This shifted the focus of philosophical anthropology into the study of the nature of human relationships and communication. The central problem became intersubjectivity. This is the study of how radically different individuals interpret and relate to each other's conscious experiences through shared symbols. Modern academics like Michael D. Jackson applied this phenomenological theory to everyday existence. Jackson observed humans often anthropomorphize objects. By cursing at a broken computer, we instinctively try to establish an interpersonal relationship with things we cannot control. Our essence is not locked away in a solitary brain. It exists dynamically across an intersubjective network of symbols, shared language, and environment. We have tracked the philosophical model of the human from a trapped soul to a hylomorphic rational animal to an isolated mind, and finally to a networked symbolic node. We see the modern necessity of this discipline in the recent tetralogy of PMS Hacker, which he describes as a summa anthropologica. A summa anthropologica is a systematic, categorical overview of human nature, ranging from substance and power to good and evil. Hacker's work maps the logico-linguistic grammar of human nature, categorizing everything from intellect and passion to moral power and our relationship with death. This grammatical baseline is necessary because without it, biology, psychology, and sociology end up using incompatible languages to describe the exact same human behaviors. Philosophical anthropology provides the unified framework required to understand ourselves as intentional, loving creators of our shared reality.